Hi, welcome to the Moral Injury Support Network podcast. I'm Dr. Daniel Roberts, President and CEO of Moral Injury Support Network for Servicewomen Incorporated. Today we have a great guest with us today. Malaysia Harrell is a board certified psychotherapist, a spiritual transformation coach, award-winning entrepreneur, veteran, keynote speaker, and author who helps women find freedom and fulfillment. But really, she is a healer, an unleasher, and a light that leads women back to their true selves so they can live fully and finally. As a licensed psychotherapist and board certified clinical social worker, Malaysia blends clinical expertise, spiritual wisdom, and intuitive guidance to help women overcome their past trauma, heal their hurts, and define their vision for their lives. Her incomparable coaching guides clients on an intimate, insightful journey to break free from limiting beliefs and expectations and discover lives of authenticity, purpose, and bliss. Extraordinary at walking them through radical transformation, Malaysia is more than her client's coach. She's their champion. Welcome to the show, Malaysia. How are you?
Thank you, Daniel. I am amazing, and thank you for this opportunity to be with you today.
Yeah, I'm very happy to speak with you. Now, tell me about your affiliation with the military and how long you were with the military and that.
Yeah, so I went into the Air Force after 9/11. That was the day that I knew I declared I was going in the military because I wanted to serve. However, before that, I was in junior ROTC and 2 years of ROTC in college. So 1 year of Air Force, 1 year of Army. But I didn't go in initially because it was like, oh my goodness, all my youth years were taken by ROTC. And, I wanted to explore some other things and ended up in the military anyways. And so I did my residency at Andrews Air Force Base. That's where I started. And then after I finished my residency, I went to North Dakota, and then Korea, and then Hawaii. And so I was in the Air Force over 7 years. I remember getting promoted to major, and then I transitioned to another service, the United States Public Health Service, which is one of the 8 uniform services. However, they are non-combatants. And then
Right.
I did altogether 20 years and 8 months total in uniform. So a majority of the time in the Navy uniform, but a good half of the time in the Air Force. So a great
Okay.
opportunity.
Yeah, so in the Air Force and the Navy, what were your jobs and what did you do?
So I was a mental health provider, clinical social worker. And, of course, as you continue to rise in the ranks, you do less and less clinical care, but you have to keep up your clinical,
Right.
acumen and stay licensed. And so I had the opportunity to work some many amazing opportunities to serve. I was the assistant to the Surgeon General of the United States and also the Director of Addictions Medicine for the Department of Defense. So I got to work very closely with the White House and, do a lot of great things that had a lot of significant impact on the way we experience public health and mental health services for our TRICARE benefits, even for veterans.
Yeah, it's psychotherapy, license, social work of any kind,
Yeah,
um, mental health counseling. These are very challenging professions, um, and a lot of it is because uh, clients present with some really difficult things.
yeah,
Um, so in your time in the military, aside from at least in the Navy and the in the Air Force, what were some of the most challenging things you had to work through with clients?
Oh, there were a lot, of course. As you said, there are significant things that people experience, right? And some things start from before they even come into service, and things happen while they're in service. And so I just remember significantly, of course, ones that were homicidal and suicidal, just working through those intimately. But then also some of the ones who, what I found was that, veterans, active duty members, we use this term resiliency, right? And so it's like a hashtag
Yeah.
word that is highly used. But I want to say, in their resiliency, I've seen some brilliance, what people trying to maintain, especially people who had jobs like security forces who were deployed, to Afghanistan. And I remember one of my clients coming in and he brought pictures of, the atrocities that he experienced firsthand. So just imagine having these deaths occur in
Yeah.
front of them, and they're bringing in the pictures and they're flooding themselves, trying to, desensitize themselves
Right.
from the nightmares. And I mean, but I'm just saying, like, people do whatever they can to survive and
Right.
still do their job and show up every day. And so I was
Right.
just, really enthralled with the different things that I saw people do, to make sure that they stay on this earth and they can continue to serve their country.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really true. I served for 32 years in the Army, and that was mostly active duty, some Army Reserve time and stuff. But over
Yeah.
that course of the of 32 years, I first came in 89, 1989. Um, we served
Wow.
in so many different kinds of operations.
That's right.
Right after I came in, we did Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and that was um, sort of a mass operations. It turned out that the enemy really wasn't a peer or anything, so it was we overwhelmed them. But that was this, force on force kind of thing. And then,
Hmm.
we got into the war on terror and various operations in Iraq and Afghanistan that went on forever and ever and ever, and the totally
Yeah.
different. In some ways, force on force can be a cleaner kind of war, quote unquote cleaner in the sense that uniform people, force on force. But when you get into a lot of what soldiers had to deal with in OEF and OIF, some early, like, you know, sort of standard clashes, but it didn't take long before you have all kinds of moral injurious experiences that people had to go through, like,
Hmm.
you know, witnessing atrocities, sometimes taking part in atrocities, doing things that are not legally wrong, but leave you scarred, like the sniper has to shoot a kid because they're
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And so those can be much more difficult, right? Because you don't really know if what you're doing is right or wrong. You don't really, there's all kinds of second guessing of yourself and be seeing things happening and not being able to do anything about it. The Afghanistan withdrawal uh, was sort of like publicly made out to be this great, heroic thing we did. But when you talk to people that were actually there and saw and had to turn people away, knowing that they were going to be violated after they did, like
Yeah.
that's not a clean thing. So, trying to help people piece themselves back together or move past these things is tough, right?
Very tough. Very tough. And you brought up so many just things that just brought me back, because I remember when we were withdrawing, I believe I was deployed, and that was my last deployment before I had my near-death experience. And I just remember watching it on TV, and it was during the height of COVID. And I remember watching it on TV. So I experienced it from different ways, but there were a lot of veterans and active duty members who, and people, families of these members. And it was like, what was all this for? And
Yeah.
it was just questions of how it was ended and so
Right.
abruptly in the way it was ended. And it just made me think about a lot of different things, in my career. And yeah, it almost triggers some more things
Yeah.
for people, especially for people who've experienced so much loss. And
Right.
even for the people who survived, right? They're thinking about um, you know, how they survived and having that survivor's guilt.
Right.
And so it was very challenging just altogether, I think. And yeah, we think about how blessed we are, to have the opportunity to have an impact on people who've really, served and have sacrificed a lot of
Right.
their world and had to come back to a world and experience it so differently. And I think people don't understand that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very much Vietnam, like the pullout, and then the people that were there in Afghanistan, or yeah, it's particularly Afghanistan, can very much relate to Vietnam veterans because it's a similar kind of experience. Like all this years and years of combat operations, only to end up saying, like, never mind, we can't do this, and just pull out.
Right,
So it's like,
right,
and the truth is, maybe it was the right political decision or whatever.
right.
This is not a political show, so we won't get into that.
No,
But
no,
irregardless, still, I mean, it's not like we didn't try to achieve some level of victory throughout all these years.
right.
But anyway, if you've been through this and you've had friends that you lost friends and stuff, like whatever the politicians say is just hollow, because you have those questions. The other thing that's interesting too is I work with some Vietnam vets, and I think you find this in any era. There are those who deployed who had a lot of combat experiences, um, and they have their own traumas, but they get a little bit of hero attention. And then there are those in the military who never deployed, and but so the ones that deployed did a lot of stuff. They have their guilt for their own reasons. But then
Right.
then you have some, like I'm thinking of a guy in particular. He served for years. It was during Vietnam,
Hmm.
but they never let him deploy, and it was because he was so valuable at what he was doing. They don't
Hmm.
want to lose that, and so he has guilt for never having deployed. And when he
Hmm.
introduces himself in a group, like at various sort of veteran meetings we might have, you can tell as he talks about his experience, there's some shame there because
Hmm.
he didn't deploy, and I totally get that. I mean, we treat, in the Army, we wear a combat patch on your right shoulder, and I was infantry for years, so we have this badge that we wear, and if you don't have one of those, you get looked down on and stuff. But
Yeah,
in reality, we're all serving, we all have a role to play.
that's right.
Um, and and so, helping people say, hey, it doesn't, but there's this sort of a damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of situation of um, both groups, those that deployed and did stuff, those that didn't, are still carrying guilt and shame for different reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think everybody is carrying something. If you've served, you've seen some things. And the people who didn't deploy, they had it challenging too, though, right? You're taking up all of the work for the people
right.
who are downrange. And it's a lot of responsibility. And then emotionally, right? You're thinking about your comrades and the people that are over there. And for people who are medical, we're the people treating everybody or, facilitating the memorial services, helping to facilitate those with, the units and bringing in mental health. And so it's I pray that people know that no matter where you served, how you served, you are of tremendous value to our country, and even the people who were civilians who served alongside of us, right? So we've seen everyone has a role to play, and I just pray that people can give themselves a level of grace while they're going through their own healing journey.
Yeah. And I think that's something we can do for them is help them. My counseling approach is basically a narrative counseling approach, and it's like tell me your story, and then I listen for how they express their story and the guilt and shame that they might be, implying, and then try to help them work through those things. So I want to transition a little bit to your own experience serving in the
Mm,
military. Women have it are in many ways more challenging than men. There are many things they have to go through and experience that men have no clue about really. And so um, most women, if not all, but I can't say all because I've not interviewed all women, but most women
right.
have some pretty traumatic experiences they had to work through serving as a female in the uniformed services. So
Hmm.
do you have some experiences like that? What was your experience like as a service member?
Well, I want to preface with, you know, I feel like I was blessed to have the opportunity to serve in the capacity that I was able to serve. Um, and I couldn't do it alone. So the people who, supported in all these missions, I have so much gratitude and just just I don't know, hope and,
Yeah.
for all of those experiences, because I don't want sometimes the negative ones do outweigh some of those
Mhm.
good ones. And so I do want to, really make sure that I am grateful and have a level of gratitude. But yes, I've experienced personally a lot of things that were very challenging. And I want to preface too, because one is will tell you kind of the transition to where I am now,
Hmm.
which was the near-death experience that I had in 2020 after I returned home from deployment. So I wasn't, so I want to just also say United States Public Health Service is not Navy. We wear Navy uniforms.
Okay.
And in times of war, we can be declared as part of the naval.
Okay.
We started with the Merchant Marines, treating them. So it's mostly a medical force. And we started with treating the Merchant Marines under the Surgeon General of the United States. So that's where it kind of started. And then they put them in the Navy uniforms.
Okay.
So they're not combatants, but I remember when I made '06, um, I almost feel, you think, oh, I made it. Like I worked so hard, my whole career to reach this level.
So
And
let me stop you there real quick. '06 being a colonel in the Army or in the Navy, what
yes,
was the actual rank?
Captain.
Captain.
Yeah.
And that's one step below Admiral, right?
Yes, one step
Okay.
below Admiral.
Just for
Yeah.
somebody who's listening who,
Oh, right, right,
yeah,
right.
okay.
Okay.
Yep.
That's true. You gotta be, because I was
Yeah.
a captain twice. I was a captain in the Air Force and I was a captain Navy rank for the
Yeah.
United States Public Health
Right.
Service. Um, you know how the book that says what you got you here won't get you there
Yeah.
is so true. It's almost like every rank that you make, it's almost like you're an airman or a private again in that
Yeah.
rank.
Right.
You have to
Right.
prove yourself all over
Right.
again. And I remember I had a civilian supervisor when I made captain, and he became very disrespectful to me. It was so interesting. And it was like, as long as I was a commander, '05, lieutenant colonel equivalent, it was like, it was okay. But when I made that next rank,
Mm,
it was almost like,
yeah.
oh, and I'll never forget this. again, I won't talk about all the things because there's been a lot, but
Yeah.
I remember the day he called me on the phone and he yelled at me and hung up the phone in my face. And I was like, what could trigger somebody to be so
Right.
disrespectful, right? And it took everything in me to, keep my bearing and not go down there to his office. I was
Yeah.
like,
Right.
oh, I had a life before the military. Like, because you think, oh, I made it. People are saluting me. No, that's what I want people to understand is that it doesn't matter what rank you are. And you've seen that at the highest level. So I can't
Mm.
even,
Yeah.
at the higher levels, you've seen the
Right.
disrespect. But that was interesting to me because I didn't think that I ever, portrayed a situation where that would be warranted. I was surprised. But I was disheartened because I had just made, captain as
Yeah.
well. So I couldn't understand what that was about. But the other thing that was very traumatic was so when I came back from deployment, I was at the height of COVID. I deployed to the Navajo Nation. And I was the lead for mental health for two medical centers for the entire reservation.
Mm.
And it was the most desolate area. They sent me by myself. And it was
Mm.
interesting because I told someone that and they were like, they didn't send you by yourself. I said, yes, they did. They sent me. I was the sole mental health provider. So they sent all different mental health providers to different areas, but I was the
Yeah.
sole mental health provider for that area. And while I was there, I had this, I would say an awakening. I don't, that's the word that I think I can identify with as a human, but it was some sort of spiritual awakening. It was very dark. It was very dangerous as well, especially for a woman to be alone.
Right.
And many different what the first time I got there, this man, he had glassy eyes, black eyes like a demon. And I
Wow.
so I knew he was on some sort of substance, he was coming straight to me. And I'm in uniform. So I'm like, what do I do? Like, I didn't even know. I was like shocked because I didn't know. I was like, I don't want to have this incident where someone in uniform is,
Yeah. Right.
having
Right.
because
Right.
I'm going to be the one that is, no matter what, is going to be the one shining on that and
Yeah.
probably not in a nice light. I was scared out about, I didn't know. I worked in addictions medicine and when people are on substances, they can do things that you wouldn't even imagine that they could do.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah, I worked in the prison system on death row before I went in the military. So I was a forensic social worker before. And so I was like, wait a minute now, like, what do I need to do here? It was very scary. Um, and so, again, a lot of scary stuff happened while I was there. And then the death toll was so high. That was one of the most red zones in the world, probably
Mm.
because the death per capita was so high in that community. They didn't have running water in their homes. It was like a third world country. And so I was like, it was almost like this. Daniel, have you ever been in an experience where you're like, yes, I'm serving my country. I came in here. And then you get there and you're like, am I really served? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is this like, just showing face?
Yeah.
Or am
Yeah.
I really doing something? So that's the part,
Right.
like, that was a personal moral when you talk about moral. It was like
Right.
this morality question for me. Like, what am I doing? And then they're telling me their stories that I never heard before.
Yeah.
You heard certain things and you get
Right.
your cultural training before you go. But I heard stories and things while I was there and spiritual stories that people were telling me. And I was just like, like what am I and what can I tell them? But I
Yeah.
did what I did and I do what I do and I felt good about that. But when I came home, things started happening, right? And so again, some of this stuff I didn't realize till now when I had a chance to reflect, but a couple weeks or a little while after I got home, I had this dream from my grandmother, and my grandmother who raised me, she is now gone beyond. And
Mm.
the message that I got was that it was time for me to go with her. And I was like, cool, like I'm good. You know what I mean? I've lived a very good life. but of course I'm married, I have a great life, but I was just like, I was at peace per se. And especially after what I had seen over there. And so, anyways, a couple weeks after, again, I put it on the back of burner. I didn't think about it. It was like, okay. A couple weeks later, I started having significant pain in my hip. And Daniel, I know pain. I've done bodybuilding. I've done marathons all over the world. So like,
Yeah.
pain is something I understand. And so um this pain though was different. It was very different and I didn't understand it. It was like unlivable pain. So one night I get up to go to the bathroom and I couldn't walk. So I didn't wake up my husband, who my Army Ranger airborne husband,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, I got this. I crawled to the bathroom. So I crawled and got in there and I'm on the middle of the floor and I'm just crying. I can't get up. I can't do anything. He hears me. He comes in. He picks me up. He's like, Malaysia, what's going on? I'm like, I can't walk. I'm in pain. So anyway, I tried to treat myself like most of us do. We don't go to the doctor. If we're going to the doctors, especially while we're active duty, something wrong. Like we're not
Yeah.
just going. And so went to the doctors a couple times. But I tried to treat it myself. They did the ambulance came one day, brought me to like some medical center. They took an x-ray, didn't see anything, gave me morphine, sent me home. And I'm like, well, if they don't see anything, then I'm good. I'll get over this.
Yeah. Right.
Again, I'm trying to treat it myself. So anyway, ultimately, I was hospitalized at Walter Reed Medical Center. Okay. The premier hospital,
Yeah.
right? We treat
Yeah.
the president there. Okay.
Right.
Oh, so most certainly I'm gonna be taken care of here. So 4 days
Sure.
in, 4 days in, I'm in the hospital and they have all, there's residents, there's fellows there. It's a big training facility. They have all these people coming in a room with white coats and they're taking notes because they couldn't understand, they couldn't find the source of the pain. So anyway, and they're asking me, can the residents come in? I'm like, yeah, I was a resident before. I understand, let them in. Maybe they'll figure out what's going on with
Yeah.
me. So 4 days in, Captain Harrell, the doctor comes in, Captain Harrell, we can't find anything. We're sending you home today. And I'm like, what? Like, you know how I was on the highest level meds, like dilated, and I'm pressing a
Yeah.
button for them to come
Yeah.
whatever's the time frame. Oh no, I couldn't even and when I was on the meds, the pain was still extreme. It was
Mm.
extreme. It just like calmed me for a second. And I'm like, wait a minute. So they're like, okay. So I said, okay, you could euthanize me because you wouldn't be able to deal with this pain. Get the
Yeah.
paperwork. So
Yeah.
then they say, okay, and we're going to send in a psychiatrist to evaluate you because you just came back from deployment. What? I said, so am I imagining this? And so at that point, I couldn't even be a patient because I already knew this process. This is what I did for a
Yeah.
living.
Yeah. Right.
Had I said anything that was out of line, they were going to put me on that mental health side and I would have died. So guess what I had? They ended up doing a sample from my hip and I had sepsis. I would have
Wow.
been gone that day or that week. Next couple of days, I would have been dead. So, for those of you who don't know about sepsis, it's a bacterial infection where it basically is so toxic that it shuts all your organs down. Most people don't recover from it. Some people never fully recover. Like I have
Yeah.
things that have happened with my body since then. Some people have had legs removed or limbs removed because of it. Some people have had to have organ transplants. Ultimately, I had all these medical conditions as a result of that because I was on so much medication and antibiotics 24/7 for like 6 to 8 weeks that I
Yeah.
believe my body went into shock. And so I had
Right.
sarcoidosis. They thought it was cancer. I had Bell's palsy. I was up to 254 pounds. Now imagine being active duty going through all
Right.
this. So if that's not trauma, I don't know what is
Yeah.
because they tell you to ask for help. And when I finally get hospitalized for the first time in my entire life, you tell me you send in a psychiatrist? Would I
Yeah.
really want to come and ask for help
Yeah. No, it's
then?
true.
So, yeah.
It's true. That's an amazing story. A friend of mine to your last point, and then I want to get into some other things, but she 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 had had some both early childhood experiences that were very traumatic, and then as a
Mhm.
soldier, some at least one sexual assault. And now she's married, she has kids, young kids, and she has a husband that's abusive. And so she's really, really struggling. And
Mm.
this was a couple of years ago. A friend of hers who also was in the military said, "You need to go see behavioral health, right?
Mhm.
They'll help you." And what happened, of course, behavioral health um, kept her for a couple of days. And
Mm.
so, because she was honest with them and said that she had considered suicide and so on.
Mhm.
Um, and that was the worst experience she could have had to her because they kept her from her kids for 2 days. They wouldn't let her leave. She
Mhm.
kept saying, "They locked me up. They locked me up."
Mm.
They didn't really solve anything for her.
Yeah.
But to her, it's like I went to get help and I got put in prison for 2 days.
Yeah.
I try to explain, they have standards they have to meet, they have to do these sort of things. But to her, I mean, it didn't matter. That was getting help was the worst thing. Um,
Understood.
so there are a lot of and then you if you do get help, so and of course she had a security clearance. Um,
Mm.
this incident as well as some physical things, she was medically retired from the military.
Mhm.
um, when she was really at the height of her career in many ways. Um,
Mm.
and she had a security clearance. Months later, actually a couple of years later, when it came time to renew, they weren't going to renew it because she had gotten sought behavioral health. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's like seek help, but it probably will end your career if you end up having, that's what people hear and think. And
Yeah.
it's really tough. I just interviewed a police captain who had very similar experiences. He had a shoot. It was a quote unquote good shoot in the sense it was a legal shoot.
Mhm.
And he kept saying over and over, I did the right thing. But the moral injury as a result of it led to all kinds of issues that he wouldn't get help for because they knew he was worried it would sink his career. And then when he did get help, they fired him anyway for PTSD. So it's like we in this country we have major issues with mental health. We have systems that are working against each other. And when
Mhm.
it comes to mental health, insurance doesn't like to pay. So we don't, we have, so that sort of makes it even more difficult for someone in your profession because there are a lot of people that need help, but there are a lot of reasons why people don't want to seek help. And it's because our systems, our institutions, like our business institutions, our military institutions, our law enforcement institutions, they don't appreciate it. And so his whole take was that we need cops getting help. Wouldn't we rather have cops on the street that have good mental health than cops that have all this hidden anger, resentment, and bitterness going on that could come out at the worst possible times, So
Yeah. No, you're so, I mean, that is what we got asked and talked about. That was such, the stigma of mental health. And what I would say is this, because of course I'm a provider, so I look at the cognitive reframe and everything.
yeah, and that's right. That's good. Yeah.
So because there are some people who go to mental health. So when at Andrews, I had to treat, Yankee White. That's the, people that work for presidential support. So imagine having domestic violence issues and you flying with the president. You
Yeah.
know. And so depending on what your job is and and so what I'm saying is there are people who've gotten mental health so that it's not a whole, it doesn't happen with everybody. But when you have, and I've had people with top security clearances who've been supported who've been able to keep theirs. There have been people who've had top security who may not have been able to keep theirs. It depends on where you are and your level of functioning for the mission, right? The mission
Right.
is first. And it was interesting that we're talking about this because in the Air Force, it was service before self and excellence in all you do. That was one of the models. And I was
Mm.
like, service before self. Like, I mean, I understand, like, we had to fall into that,
Right.
but service before self. So I'm not going to serve myself first, and you're going to put me on that line.
Yeah.
So I don't really go by that ideology anymore. But I think that education is very important. And also, like you said, the way you do things. So if she felt like, hey, I'm being hospitalized, would there have been an opportunity? Because guess what? The family is a big part of the resource for people that don't decide to
Yeah.
take their lives. So would it have been helpful? Of course, you have to do an evaluation. Sometimes it's just very temporary. You go in for 48 hours,
Right.
they do a watch, they get a good treatment plan with you. They want to make
Right.
sure, right, you're safe, whatever is the situation. But I also like to include the family in that treatment
Yeah.
plan because that's what brings you over, right? On the side
Right.
of, hey, I got to do this. I have my children. And so when you do it, there's a way to do everything and there's a way to say everything too. And, even with the cultural competence and, just that level of empathy and compassion. And so, yeah, if I tell you I have pain, it's like, let's get this psychiatrist in here. It's like, wait a minute now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm a mental health provider, so I understood where everything was coming, but I
Yeah.
couldn't be a patient at the same time. So
Right.
if you can't be a patient, you're not going to be able to heal. If you don't
Right.
feel a level of trust, you're not going to be able to heal. And so it's not necessarily, it's the way you do things too, right? I understand
Yeah.
they're systematic, and what you said, some things are not covered. And is there, for all the people who need it, is there even capacity?
Right.
You can't even get in.
Right. No, it's true. It's very true. I mean, um and there's so many nuances. Like I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I believe in mental health. I think people should do it. My criticism is with, the systems.
Yeah, oh, the system's not
Yeah,
designed to,
absolutely. But
it's
but
not.
there are like there's a behavioral health clinic here in our area.
Hmm.
And I had been talking to several veterans and was getting and plus I had sought therapy myself and wasn't getting the insurance to pay for it and so on, and it was really frustrating. So there's this behavioral health clinic nearby, and they do a lot of veterans, and I asked them about the insurance piece, and they said they're very, very successful getting insurance to pay for it and stuff. So a lot of it has to do with I mean, not just the insurance companies being evil. It has to do with who's willing to do the work
To
uh,
get it.
and to get work with insurance companies and build those relationships and find out how they have to do it. My particular therapist wasn't willing to do that. She said, "I just give you a bill, you file with insurance company." The insurance company never did pay me. And it's probably possible they could have, but I mean, I shouldn't have to pay you and chase down all the paperwork, right? And then there are
But
other,
look, if it's service connected, you already know what that means. So if it's
yeah,
service connected,
mine wasn't. Mine was early
oh,
childhood connected. So like,
okay.
but anyway, like I'm saying, there's a lot of nuances to it. A lot of people have varied experiences, and
It is.
with the clearance, if you have people that go to bat for you, like commanders and so on, you know, like with her clearance, I had a chance to write a letter about, basically, yeah, she sought mental health, but while she was doing it, she also worked for
Yeah.
them, and she
Yeah.
did great work and all this stuff. So it's not a it's not a foregone conclusion, but you
Right.
need like lots of people supporting you, doing different things. You need
You
people that are
do.
willing to go beyond. and we just don't have enough. There's also the final thing I would say before I move on, because I want to talk about the work you're doing and stuff now,
Okay.
but there is a lot of misperceptions about mental health.
Yeah.
Like assumptions that if you have PTSD, you're not useful. You can't do work. There are a lot of high functioning people with PTSD that are high functioning. There are also
Yeah.
people with PTSD that are extremely low functioning because there's the level of comorbidity with their PTSD is
Hmm.
just very high. So there's a whole range of things.
There's
There
so,
are people
yes.
with, various mental struggles and whatever that can be good employees, but they also often, with you need to be able to what companies need to be able to do is think about, hey, this person is a brilliant person. They're a veteran. They're going to do great work, but occasionally they're going to need a couple of days that may come up out of the blue. Like if somebody has PTSD, they can get triggered and they can't work
Yes.
for a couple of days. We
Yeah.
can't just be like, I don't want an employee that can't, grind out. We have to accept, that there are going to be some accommodations we have to give them
Yeah.
and that it's worth it to do it, and a lot of people and employers, they don't want that. They don't want difficulties and challenges. They're happy to like be pro veteran, but not ones that have issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of education that needs to go on and so on. I'm kind of on my soapbox and I apologize for that.
No,
But,
no, this
we're
isn't a soapbox. This is
yeah,
great because we
yeah,
need the advocacy. We need your voice for the voiceless. Not a lot of people are talking about this. And one of the things that, and we'll talk about what I do, but one of the things I came up with for my mental health and wellness business is being able to work with employers to provide the services on site. So not necessarily literally on site, it could
yeah,
be
right,
virtual. But if you provide these services, and again, you when you say to deal with it, there's people who didn't serve that got
right,
accommodation.
exactly, right. That's
Wait a
right,
minute now. I'd rather have, some highly trained leaders in their
right,
field who are going to get the job done. And, so I don't want to just like separate, but the veterans and what their resources that would be helpful to help them thrive in those environments are unique. And so we can come in and help you provide those resources to them in-house. So you remember everything was on base. Remember? So you're
right,
at your duty
right,
station, you go to the hospital, it's down the road on the
right.
same facility. Sometimes you got to go to different facilities if you need specialty
Yeah,
care
right.
and you're on a smaller base. But you get the point.
Yeah, sure.
So if that close proximity is there, number one, you know that I care about you, right? That I'm going to have these resources, like kind of like EAP, but however, specifically for veterans that can bring in that different nuance because veterans don't want to be babied either. And some of them
Right.
are not going to tell you they need support. They're
Yeah,
very proud
that's
and
right.
they're not going to tell you that. So I'm glad that you are talking about that. The medical system in general, not just even for is flawed. And so it's not set up to accommodate what is actually needed. And sometimes we need to ask the veterans what they need,
Yeah,
right? Everybody tell you need this. No,
yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to tell you, let me tell you what I
Right,
need. And then let's adapt the resources to that because even if I put this out there and it's not what you want, then I'm just wasting my time.
right.
So yeah, I love that we're having this conversation, and I think we need more of it, with with the leaders and the politicians and
Yeah,
the people who are in this space to write policy. And, there's a different nonprofits that are lobbyists and do that as well. But I'm glad that you're in the space and you're saying, you know what? I can write a letter. I could have this person work for me
right,
intimately, and I can, and get them back on a therapeutic regimen. But
right.
one thing I will also say for the veteran community and their families is sometimes we believe that we have to go into a job and do different things because we need to make money, which is partially true. But when you go in you know how they say you can't heal in an environment that got you sick? So if you go in this low level environment, not, I don't want to say low level, I don't want to use that term.
Yeah.
But what I mean is if you're used to operating up here,
Mm.
and you're just at a desk all day taking calls like that, you may not be in alignment with that type of work. So doing something that try to find something that helps you thrive, and that's going to help you on your healing journey too. When you feel like you're not being utilized, you
Yeah.
were running, brigades and all that, and then
Yeah.
you come
Right.
here and you're like, counting sheep. It's kind of weird, you're trying to I saw a meme the other day. And I actually reposted in my stories, and someone said something about, this is what veterans, fear, or
Yeah.
veteran. And the person was on a Zoom call and they had this headset, and someone was like, just talking nonsense and it was just so funny. And I was like, that's real. That's really how
Yeah.
we feel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's that's very true. When I first retired, I tried teaching eighth grade math.
Okay.
What a disaster. I mean, it just I
Really?
mean, I retired as sergeant major,
Yeah.
and and but I wasn't a typical, like, when you think of a sergeant major, rough, gruff, all that stuff. I was, you know, um not like that. Anyway, so they had this impression, hey, this sergeant major is going to come in here and straighten up all these kids. And there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of difference between eighth graders who
Right.
might be the worst, the worst kind of student in the world, because they want to be a high school. They think they're ready to be
That's
adults and do
right.
whatever they
That's
want. They don't
right.
really care. And you can't, like, in sixth, seventh grade, I watched the teachers. They had them really under control. By eighth grade, they were just, excuse me. But anyway, um,
Wow, that's amazing that you did that. I
I
could
tried
see.
it, but it wasn't me at all. It wasn't a fit for me.
No.
Now, I will say that there were some great moments. Some kids that came into the thought I could never learn math.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were learning math. I mean, kids that were on a fourth grade level. They were eighth graders, but they were on like a fourth grade level for math. After
Oh,
a few
wow.
weeks, they were starting to really turn around.
Yeah.
Um, so the teaching the math I was good at. The behavioral stuff was where I really struggled. The other teachers, eighth grade teachers, were also struggling with behavioral stuff in their students,
That's right.
but not to the level I was, because I was a rookie. I was brand new. But and I'm not saying I couldn't have learned how, but it was just like mentally, I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It was just to make money, because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure how much disability I was going to get. And so I took a job that I knew at least I'll get this, and I don't,
Yeah.
whatever. Once I found out I was getting the 100% and I knew what the disability was, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore, because I don't
That's
need it for
right.
money. And I just the level of anxiety I had every day was so high. Like,
Yeah.
I never experienced, even at war, I never experienced that level of anxiety. And it was because I was a fish completely out of water.
Yeah.
I was just totally unprepared, not trained, just anyway. So all that to, like, illustrate, it can't be just about money. It has to be something that
That's
suits
right.
you. Now, you may retire from the military. You might not go straight to, like, vice president of something, even if you were a colonel or whatever. But something that you feel like you're giving. God gives us all these gifts,
That's right.
and He expects us to use them to repair the world.
That's
And
right.
and if you're not doing that, and you don't feel like, even if you don't think in those terms, if you don't feel like you're able to really use the best that you are in some way, irregardless of the money. Now,
Mhm.
people have to make money, but
Yeah.
at least working towards, and that's why a lot of people get into coaching, is because they're able to. Um, But before we run out of time, I want to make sure that I spend a good enough time talking about what are you doing now? How are you helping people now? What's your business? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so, and this has been such an enlightening conversation, so I really appreciate it. So I work with high achieving primarily for the coaching space, spiritual transformation, because I believe that people need to be in alignment with their divine assignment. That's when it doesn't feel like work. You will never work a day in your life. So I work primarily on a coaching level with high achieving women who are very successful as far as what the world deems successful, but
Yeah,
they are completely empty inside, and they're like crying in the car, before they go
right.
to work, and they're in these high level leadership positions, and so they're hiding in plain sight. And so I help them to get in alignment, and get clarity and to flourish into where their gifts lie. Some people don't realize what they are, or they have forgotten what they are. They knew it as a child, as a youth, they loved to do
Right.
something, but again, they think, oh, I need this money, so I have to do this. And so I've helped a lot of women transition from, doing whatever they were doing. Some people are in entrepreneurship. They may have had I had one client had a brick and mortar, and she closed that down and now went into the cybersecurity space, and she's thriving with that. So I've helped a lot of people kind of transform and transition into where they are actually supposed to be, and that helps them on their healing journey. And I own a mental health and wellness business. We provide those solutions for individuals, groups, and specifically veterans as well. And I have a nonprofit that is called the Malaysia Harrell Foundation. My for-profit is Blissful Life Consulting. And so we provide both of these services to individuals, groups, and corporate wellness as well. But in the nonprofit, we provide these services to veteran women specifically because their needs are so unique and other underrepresented populations. So I thrive doing that because I know where the need is. And when I feel like I'm using my gifts for what, I've been called to do, it doesn't feel like, I mean, of course, you have challenges being an entrepreneur,
Yeah, right.
but it doesn't feel hard. It doesn't
Right.
feel like you're banging your head up against the wall. And of course, I get to speak all over the world. I'm about to go speak in the Netherlands the end of February, and work and get called for different panels and speaking engagements. I'm going to
Right.
speak for an organization that's speaking for the NFL wives next week for Super Bowl week in
That's cool.
California.
That's really
So
cool.
I just love, and then I get to meet people like you who are making a huge impact in this world, one day at a time, one moment at a time. And that synergy just helps to spread more light, on these issues. So, and I see your little doggy.
Yeah, it's a cat actually. It's a little
Oh,
yeah, but he went by so fast. I have a couple of cats. I love cats. I like
oh,
dogs too, but I don't like them in my house. So,
oh, okay.
um, but yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot. That's awesome. Um, the one question I want to ask before we kind of close things down is in the case you talk about women not they're in leadership positions, they're probably making money in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the main issue for most of them that they're just not doing what they would love to do? Is that the case with most of them? So once they or are there other issues that um like relationship things or in
Mm-hmm.
your coaching piece?
Yeah. There are many different aspects to different people depending on where they are. But one of the big things that I see is that these women wear a mask, and so they want the world to believe that they're this successful mogul,
Mm.
and they don't want to face whatever it is that they need to heal. And so there's some sort of pain, so what happens is, they the world sees them as this, right? So they get that form of validation, maybe that
Yeah.
they didn't get from somewhere else, and they don't want to dig deep into that pain and acknowledge it. And so they keep themselves on fight or flight, and they keep going so they
Yeah.
don't have
Right.
to acknowledge what that pain is. But what usually happens is they start breaking down. So their bodies, they start having
Right.
headaches, whatever starts to happen that is not allowing them to be in fight or flight forever. Your body can't operate that way
Right.
forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I think, I think a lot of us men too are prone to this,
Hmm.
avoiding things. I mean, you find people in bad marriages for years, and
Yes.
as bad as their marriage might be, they're more afraid of the unknown
Yep.
and that sort of thing. And when you're thinking about revisiting these issues, deep-seated things,
Hmm.
um, that's scary in itself because of the triggering process. And it's as a provider, right? It's important to be super sensitive because you don't want to crack somebody open, expose them, and then not be able to help them with it. You've just made their life
That's
so much
right.
worse. So
That's
I
right.
think the fact that you have the psychotherapy skills and
Hmm.
years of experience. So this is not just coaching. Like you have the whole gamut. You're fully trained to
That's
dig
right.
as deep as people are willing to dig, right? To get to their source of pain and stuff. And that's really
Yeah.
commendable. And I'm glad you're doing it that because um, we really we want people to be um, functioning at their best. That's how the world becomes a great place is when everyone is functioning at the best. From my, religious perspective, we all
Hmm.
fill a unique place in the world, and we're uniquely designed for that. And
That's right.
but it so the world is missing something. We're not just billions of
Hmm.
people that
Right.
don't matter. The world is missing something when people are
That's
not able
right.
to
It's
function
a
that way.
puzzle. Yeah.
And and your body tells a tale, and your mind tells a tale, and your lack of sleep tells a tale.
That's
Like
right.
it's not like we're not given clues. It's
That's right.
just, are we willing to do the work? And the other thing is too, like it takes discipline, right?
It does.
You're coaching people, you give them modalities, but you're not waving a magic wand at people, right? They have to take some disciplined steps to begin to
Hmm.
recreate themselves, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the just acknowledging. So most people don't acknowledge it. They just know, hey, I gotta make a change. They don't may not know exactly what. And so just deep digging down and getting clarity on that, I think is very, very important. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so how do people get in touch with you if they need help, they want help, they want to contact you and work with you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if people want to transform their personal life and their business, they can get in touch with me on at info@malaysiaharrell.com and also malaysiaharrell.com and of course speaking engagements. And I'm on most social media platforms, primarily Instagram, Malaysia H. Harrell. And so I just look forward to connecting with, everyone who's out there. Make sure you're following me. And I do have a YouTube channel as well.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that in the show notes for this, we'll put your links and stuff and
Okay.
share this video and all, so you can share it on your YouTube, your social media. You can do that because we want to get this kind of information to the broadest possible audience and
Absolutely.
make sure people know that you're a resource for them. So, Malaysia, it's been great having you on the show. I appreciate it very much, and you know, um, I wish the best for you, your family, and the customers and the patients that you serve.
Thank you, Daniel. It was truly my pleasure, and I wish you all the best as well.
Thank you.